Hi, welcome to the Gabriel Method Live. I've got a really exciting guest for you. First, let me just bring in my co-host, Neil in Hightower. Neil, you there?
Yeah, I'm here, John. How are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing great. I'm really excited to be part of this. It's going
Yeah.
to be really exciting.
Yeah, a lot of you might remember Neil from the step-by-step course and the video blogs that we've been doing. And Neil, I know you also might have some questions for us from people that have been emailing in, and so we might try to get to that later. But first, let me introduce our guest. She's an amazing person, probably one of the most amazing people I've ever met in my life. I'm just going to read some of her bio because her bio is so extensive. It just goes on and on. I'm just going to pick out a couple of parts. She's an author, entertainer, TV personality, social activist, motivational speaker, and former Ford model. She's the author of international best-selling book called Fighting Weight, which details her lifelong struggle with weight and how she was successful using lap band surgery. She's the daughter of boxing champion Muhammad Ali, and just some of the things on her bio are just unbelievable. She was nominated for an Emmy Award for hosting Education is Paramount. She was the Volunteer of the Year Award by Ernie Allen, president of the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, for her dedication, commitment, and work with the National Committee for Missing and Exploited Children. She got the first NYU School of Medicine Hope Award for her work with obesity in children, and she's the U.S. ambassador for Steve Irwin's Wildlife Warriors. She's also got a range of clothing under the diversity name. It's very successful. There's just so many different areas that she's successful at, and she's a really engaging speaker. So let me bring her in. Khaliah, are you there?
I'm right here. How are you?
Good. How are you, sweetheart?
I'm good. You know, to be thousands of miles away hearing your voice, I feel like I'm sitting right there with you.
Beautiful. Yeah. So Khaliah, I just want to start. You've had like a lifetime of weight issues. Is that right?
Like many people who struggle with obesity, my battle has been as long as I can remember breathing. As a child, I always remember people saying, "Oh, she's built like her father." And with your father being heavyweight champion of the world at the time, emotionally, spiritually, I really started putting messages in my head. And so the journey began. Yeah. And for me, unlike most other children, I found myself on the Today Show at the age of 8 for the very first time on a diet.
Yeah.
You know, I went through my teen years, I went through my early adulthood years, and by the time I had a child and looked at my life and realized that I had cut myself out of every photo. I never was in a swimming suit in public. I had this beautiful child that I cherished more than anything, and there were so many areas of my life that I had already died that I had decided to surrender, put myself on a surgical slab, which is pretty deep, and once again on the Today Show. My surgery was live on the Today Show. I opted to have banding surgery.
Yeah.
At that time, I was aware of the gastric bypass, and I felt that it was entirely too invasive, that this was more minimally invasive. My surgeon who did it, who's also an Australian, he's from Brisbane. His name is George Fielding, who is my co-author, and he also has a lap band, really had a conversation with me that had me connect to that this was the thing to do. And of course, we all know now, and especially many, many years out, that these surgeries are not magic bullets. Yeah. So with your assistance, your love, your nourishment, and choosing the band, I'm finally beginning to live my life, which is a really big deal for someone who's battled for what felt like a lifetime. And it actually was.
And you've lost, 150 some odd pounds, something like that?
At the height of my weight loss, I had lost 180 pounds. Yeah. 5 years later, I'd had my skin surgeries done and ended up gaining weight. So I'm up 30, 40 pounds that I'm working on right now.
So before I talk about the weight loss and your lap banding, I just want to go back a little bit. And do you, as you look back on your life, do you have any kind of idea of why the weight came on? Do you think the pressures of being in the limelight from the age of 10 would have something to do with it? Have you given any thought to really what was causing your weight gain?
I think like many people, it was a mosaic. And as I travel along this journey, I get another piece to make the full picture. Definitely, there was a lot of pressure from a young age telling myself that there was something wrong. I grew up in a predominantly white community along the main line here in the States, where there weren't other people with my body type, things I didn't know to appreciate, like buxomness calves, a six-pack, big thighs, which eventually turned into fat. And so my body shape itself, and that's what I integrate into my fashion and designing, I didn't quite get. I'm not really built like anyone on my mother's side of the family, and that was very complicated too. We also didn't know what we know about nutrition. As a child, there were a lot of large glasses of juice, or come home from school and probably consume, 800 poisonous calories before dinner ever got to the table. And like other children, I wasn't playing consistently outside with friends or in a sports team. I think those things made a contribution at an early age. Emotionally, spiritually, I definitely ate to protect myself. I ate to protect myself from the world. I think that was my comfort zone. Like many children.
I just want to talk about that, Khaliah, because I think that's important because you bring up this point that, there was fruit juice all around and I wasn't that active. But there's lots of kids out there that drink, or at least when we were younger, not so much now that we have an obesity epidemic for a totally different reason, which we can talk about later. But when we were younger, lots of kids drank juice and lots of kids weren't that active, but they weren't heavy. So when I hear you talk about how this was some of the reasons, I'm thinking to myself, no, that's not it. But now, as soon as you start talking about the emotional factor and that you're feeling that you wanted to hide from yourself, hide from the world, that to me makes more sense. Because here you are, you're Muhammad Ali's daughter, and everybody's looking at you, and you're on shows from the age of 10, and you're feeling uncomfortable. And so I'm just wondering if you can share that a little bit, like what it is you're saying you're feeling like this need to hide from the world.
Yeah, well, and just to correct things a little bit, I mean, it's like I said, it's a mosaic, and you kind of peel the layers of the onion. You see the external things, and then you really get internal. So here it is. Sure, there was a lot of pressure. There was a lot of pressure in my household. I was raised in a single-parented home. I did not live with my father, and there was a lot of stress. And I ate to help absorb the stress, probably a little bit of a serotonin release from the stress, and ultimately to protect myself. The weight became a layer of protection. And as you grow throughout life, there were what we call, seemingly on the exterior, are the ups and the downs. But that person was still there inside. It was one of the reasons why during the first year, and anyone who's listening who's had a surgery knows that it was cathartic in that I couldn't run downstairs and eat. I had to think about it. I had to be with that thought. I had to process that pain. And that was a really huge thing for me.
Well, Khaliah, I hear horror stories all the time of people that have said, I had either originally it was mostly gastric banding was the big one where they were just you'd hear these things, well, they cut my stomach to the point where it's just the size of a golf ball and that's all that's left of it, and I lost 50 pounds as soon as I got the surgery, but then I stopped losing and now I still have maybe 100 pounds to lose and I'm not losing any weight, I'm not eating anything, I'm exhausted all the time. What do you do then?
Here's the thing. The band doesn't involve cutting of the stomach. That would be the bypass, which simply sections off a portion. Like anything else, these surgeries aren't even, or maybe just as they are mainstream in the public, a decade old. Now, we know some of them, like the bypass, has been around 16 years. Banding hasn't even been approved by FDA for, I think, an entire decade or just past. So I think what's happened is, number one, people were sold, like many of the pharmaceuticals do, something that was like a one-off. This is it and you're done. And we now know today that that's absolutely not true. And then for the people who did look at it and understand that it wasn't a golden bullet, some people felt that their lives were so much on the line that they just had to make that decision at that moment. I think anyone going into surgery really needs to be silent and go within and listen to themselves for the first time because there's so much noise out there. And for me, when I did that, this is what I heard. But for everyone, it could be a very different voice. The whole epidemic of people, especially with banding, not losing the weight, is a real serious issue.
It's a huge issue.
And it's more than it's more than a physical issue. It's an emotional issue because nothing feels worse than having had surgery and feel that you failed that too.
Yeah.
But that's just the end of the line.
That's heartbreaking, and that's what I have to deal with on a daily basis when I talk to people. Is that experience where they've finally said, "Okay, I'm going to do the surgery. I surrender to it." They do the surgery, and it still doesn't work. And I think what's different about you, and what's most important, I think in terms of your messages, and I know this personally because I worked with you for several years, is that you didn't just do the surgery, you still addressed the real issues. Because in reality, all the surgery does is make your stomach a little bit smaller. But if your body still wants to hold on to weight, it's just going to adjust your whole metabolism so that it's slower and that you're craving more foods more frequently if it wants to hold on to the weight. Now, you, I know, did the work because I did it with you. I worked with you. And I think it's a really important message. And I think, personally, it's one of the reasons why you've been so successful at not only losing the weight, but keeping it off. How long have you kept the weight off now? This has to be years.
It's been going on about, I think I'm heading for seven years now.
Yeah.
7 years. And I have to agree, the integrated approach is very important. The one thing that is essential for other people to hear, however, is if you have a band, you have to keep it adjusted.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't keep their bands adjusted properly, and that's as big of an issue as just the failure itself. And for anyone listening with the band, it's really important that they do this work that we're talking about, but if they still have their band, they have to make sure that it's properly adjusted. That's a really big deal.
Okay.
A huge oversight in a lot of practices. And George Fielding, I'm fortunate enough to go to the best in the world. Yeah. And we make sure that I'm properly adjusted. But that's really a strong message for people as well.
But I know also, for example, people will get a band and then they'll start drinking McDonald's milkshakes, and that's what they're going to have for lunch, thinking that they're going to lose weight. And from my experience, what happens with that is you go into a very serious nutritional famine because your stomach's already smaller, so you can't hold nutrients. And then you're not eating nutrient-rich foods, and that nutritional famine activates your fat programs and causes your body to hold on to weight. And I know when I talk to you, you tell me about some of the incredible recipes that you're making, that you're eating very nutritionally dense foods. I'm wondering if you could talk about that a little bit.
Absolutely. Well, in the very beginning of my journey, one of the most significant things that you brought into my world, and to this day I love above all else, is avocado.
Yeah.
A lot of the core essential things that you and I talked about nutritionally and the things that you shared with me and guided me to were the things that really had me achieve optimal health and nutrition. I didn't get this band to lose weight. I wanted to achieve optimal health, and that's where you come in.
Yeah.
It was the core essentials like the avocado and the wheatgrass juice and the flaxseed. So the traditional banding diet would say in the morning drink a processed store-bought protein shake, and maybe in the afternoon eat a container of highly processed hollow yogurt. Working with you, I would have our special shake that we designed with the flax seeds with my Barlean's Omega in it.
Well, tell me.
And at lunchtime.
But tell me what that was. What's the shake that you and I were put together?
We do a vegetable. It has been a vegetable protein base with my ground flax seeds. I'm sometimes on and off of dairy, so sometimes I'd add a Greek yogurt to it. Sometimes I wouldn't. I just do the pure vegetable protein. I use a scoop of bee pollen, which is incredibly delicious and gives me my energy. And maybe a handful of fruits, whatever my intuition tells me I need or I was guided to. I tend to stick to the lower glycemic ones, which, you'll slap me on the wrist for. All fruit's good. But I'll put my berries and apples in it and go about my day. And at lunch, there was a time when I was drinking the kefir instead of a yogurt, Greek yogurt instead of a plain yogurt. But then also really remembering to eat whole food, I love stuffed avocados and a lot of delicious recipes.
Well, the point that you make about avocado, and I just have to make this point, is that, people, we're accustomed to think that fat is bad and that fat makes fat, and that's not the case. If you look at our bodies, every single cell of our bodies is covered with a layer of fat. And our brain cells, for example, are 65% fat. And so other than water, the most predominant molecule that we have in our body is fat, and we need it for all proper cellular functioning. So when you eat the wrong type of fats, your cells aren't functioning right with your hormones, and it's the hormonal imbalance that activates the fat programs, not the fat just turning into fat. And so when you're eating things like avocados and flax seeds and flaxseed oil and fish oils and things like this, you're coating your body with a very healthy fat that allows for proper communication with the cells and the hormones, and then you don't get a hormonal imbalance, and then the hormones that are cause you to gain weight go down, and the hormones that cause you to lose weight increase, and then it becomes a very automatic thing. So people are still accustomed to thinking of calories in, calories out, and I know the standard dietary approach for a lap band surgery is exactly that. It's dead, processed, devitalized foods, low fats, and low glycemic, but just dead nutrition. And so what happens with people is they lose that 50 pounds, and then they're in such a severe chronic nutritional famine, and their hormones get so out of whack, and that activates their fat programs, and their body goes into perpetual fat storage mode. It's so heartbreaking, and I have to deal with this all the time. And to see someone like you who tells me about the rich, delicious foods that you're adding to your body and how you're nourishing and loving your body and how successful you are, it just is a real refreshing aspect, and I think.
Well, one of the big things is, even I was born and raised, as you know, vegan, but that lasted about 5 years before other things crept in. I kind of went from vegan to the worst diet.
Yeah.
But it still instilled the love of things that are good, and to this day, the healthy fat stand as a testimonial. My cholesterol's under 140.
Yeah,
always has.
That doesn't surprise me.
My resting sugar's 70. My blood pressure's excellent.
Yeah.
And a lot of people wonder, and I said, well, you really do get back what you put in. You really are truly exactly what you eat.
At this point, many.
I eat extraordinary amount of. I eat such a high amount of fat.
Yeah.
Such a high amount of fat.
But it's a very essential fat, and I'll tell you, you've gone so far from a nutrition aspect. You've gone so far with it that you're giving me these amazing recipes for kale chips and mueslis. And by the way, just want to let you know we're 1 week away from sending our recipe book to the printer. 1 week away, and it is amazing. It's 300 pages of amazing Gabriel Method recipes. I'm really happy with it. We're 1 week away from it. But as I've been making this recipe book, I know you've been telling me about some of your favorite nutrient-rich smooth, like chips, and now you're working with the dehydrator, which, by the way, I have no patience for a dehydrator. I have to say, I'm trying it. I'm really trying, but I've got no patience for a dehydrator.
I just kind of set 3 of them up, and you keep them going, and one's never going to be done, and one's always done.
They're never done.
Yeah.
They're never done.
Well, I think that there's a bit of a war out there, and the dehydrator really is a great asset because it allows me to take a lot of foods I otherwise couldn't with me when I travel. Like I dehydrate, I do a teriyaki salmon dehydrated.
Well, how do you do that? Tell me about that.
And I do, quite simply, I make my own teriyaki sauce.
What do you make your teriyaki sauce out of?
I use stevia.
Uh-huh.
I use a dry hoisin powder and a little bit of chili paste and olive oil.
Uh-huh.
Mix it up.
Uh-huh.
Paint my salmon with it.
Uh-huh.
A little bit of garlic, too. Probably a little bit of garlic.
Uh-huh.
I love scallion. I'll put a little green onion on top of it and place it into the dehydrator. And I have dehydrated salmon. I make my own wasabi peas. I love Asian foods, so you'll hear that consistency.
So why do you make your own teriyaki and wasabi? Why don't you just buy a store-bought? What makes you make your own?
One, I can't find the salmon teriyaki anywhere. But two, and I kind of have an on-again, off-again relationship with meat itself better than fish.
So you just take the actual salmon steak and dehydrate it?
That's it.
And how long do you do that for?
8 hours.
And what does it taste like? Does it taste like, does it get smaller? Does it get dry? Like, obviously it gets dry, but does it taste smoky?
Definitely, it's a trial and error thing. And you can use liquid smoke, too, by the way.
Okay.
But it is a trial and error kind of thing. Yeah, and it depends on your preference. I don't mind it if it's a little bit crispy.
Okay, that sounds really good. So you make your own smoke. What else do you make with it dehydrated?
I do wasabi peas. I do fruits. I do just about anything. I watch my fruits. My fruits tend to be my, every 2 weeks when, like a lot of women, we hit our cycle and are craving sweet things. I crave the mangoes and the papaya. I get those good enzymes out of it and bromolamine. So I hydrate those.
Let me just say one thing, Khaliah. When you're talking about fruits, like sweet fruits like that, I think that's one area where I would stay away from the dehydrator, because that is going to cause blood sugar problems. Mango, to me, is a lot of people think fruits are. People group carbohydrates into one lump sum, and they say, if it's too high on the glycemic index, it's bad. Blah 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 blah. But I say no. There's really good carbs and there's really bad carbs. Anything that's alive is a good carb, because your body knows how to process the sugars properly. Anything that's dead, like bread or rice or pasta or refined sugar, is going to cause your body problems. But when you take something like a mango is great, but when you dehydrate it, it's a little bit concentrated. So I would still, even when you're having your sugar cravings, I would still opt for a smoothie that's got mango in it and some of your favorite fruits with a little bit of stevia, rather than dehydrating them. Because the other ingredients in the smoothie will keep your blood sugar much more stable and will not cause an exaggerated insulin response.
Sounds good to me, too. Well, it helps if I'm traveling, but sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
Khaliah, this is Neil here. I'm just sitting here listening to you, and I'm wondering, and I imagine a lot of our listeners might be too, so how much can you eat now, compared to what would have been normal for you? I mean, I would imagine you would have to dehydrate some of your food. Your nutrients, I would imagine, have to be very dense for you to get in enough protein and get in enough of the good things that you need. Is that correct?
I'm glad you said that. That was my next statement. Absolutely. Things like you can do raw cookies. I do a raw pumpkin cookie or even a raw kale chip. Not just kale itself, but it's like a kale mixture that I make that's like a chip, and it's great because when your band is tight, it's not always possible to sit in front of a kale salad, let's say, and crunch and chew and get that down. But if I'm able to take some of those ingredients and dehydrate it into what's like a kale chip or even the pumpkin cookie, I'm able to get them down. And that's true. And it's really something very specific on to band patients.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds to me like it's something that people should understand, that you don't just put the band on and kind of walk away and your problems go away. Now you have a very specific set of circumstances. Now you have to really become an expert in how you prepare your food, where you get it and how you're going to do it. Otherwise, my grandmother did this, and the first thing that she wanted to do, she was eating peanut butter forever because it was the most dense thing she could get her hands on, and she put a bunch of weight right back on. And I don't think she was psychologically or emotionally ready for any of this. She got it approved through, I don't know, Medicare or something like that, and they went ahead and did it. But I think this is a very, it sounds to me like a decision that has to you really have to put some thought into it, and you really have to say, are you committed now to going this other route? Which see, like for me, I think it would be very hard because one of the things that I enjoy right now is I enjoy a nice big salad once or twice a day. I've just come to really crave it, and I'd imagine you just can't do that now, right?
I can. That's the thing about the band. It's completely adjustable. So I could adjust my band and I could eat just like I never had surgery. I could adjust the band and I could eat a proper size salad, or I could have the band so adjusted that it'll be really difficult to eat it. And that's why when John and I were talking earlier, I said it's really important to understand your adjustments and how you're adjusted and where you're comfortable at. And it's the thing, it's the general tone in society that, hey, look, people do it with more than bands. We do it with cosmetic procedures. You don't like it, hop on a table. Without really much thought that this really is a surgery and it's going to change every aspect of your existence. And it can be for the better or it can be for the worse. And, surgeons are surgeons. They're not nutritionists, and that's the other thing people need to know. So surgeons we're just now hitting that curve where they're really working with nutritionists in their office, and they're really creating lifestyle programs for people. But back when I got my band, it was kind of like you're operated on, and there you go.
Yeah. And it's not just the thought that you have to put into the surgery, but it's the consciousness that you have to bring to what you're putting into your body that, quite frankly, you would have to do regardless of whether or not you got the band.
That's right.
The bottom line is you have to learn how to nourish your body. And as I'm listening to you speak, you know as much at this point about creative ways to nourish your body with unprocessed, truly vital foods as anyone I know. And that's amazing.
I think it's the quality of your intent to, and then sometimes it's just what you're privileged to know. I've had the awesome benefit of having you so close to me. I've had the awesome benefit of being raised by a woman who passionately believed in alternative medicine, living, and in natural foods. Yeah. So I realize that I've been very blessed, and it's one reason why, because I have been disproportionately blessed, I've been trying really hard to share that information with others. Yeah. I came home and I saw the recipes they gave me and puree this and that, and instead I was like pureeing, which we know better now, but tofu salads and pureeing my fishes and making wonderful spreads. And you have to have a disposition. So it is important that you're doing what you're doing, and I'm trying to do what I'm doing as well.
So let me ask you a question, Khaliah. Now, Neil and I both know that it's not just about the size of your stomach. It's not just about nutrition, but that stress and emotional issues will cause you to gain weight, and dealing with those stresses and those emotional issues will cause you to lose weight. Now, it's really clear that you've got you're nourishing your body. You know nourishment, and you are truly giving your body food full of love, life force, vitality, and nourishment. So you're really nourishing your body. What I want to ask you, though, is as far as from the stresses in your life, when you look back at where you were and how you felt, this feeling of having to hide from the world, and now I'm looking at you and you are out there. I mean, you are not hiding from the world. You are out there in every aspect, being a humanitarian, being a TV personality, being a model, being an author and public speaker. You're out there. So before you had this sort of feeling of having to hide from the world and a stress, an emotional issue that caused you to want to create like a buffer from the world, where are you now?
I'm still on that journey, and I think that how I measure my sense of wellness and well-being is how quickly do I fix and repair when I break down, because I still struggle with those moments. They're not as close together. They're not as long-lasting. They might have a new face now, but I have a set of tools that I did not have before, and I just get better.
Could you tell us what some of those tools are? I mean, how do you cope? I mean, I think this is really important because here you are, and any given day, I think an argument could certainly be made that you probably deal with more stress than a lot of people do, or at least a different kind that most of us don't have to deal with. What are some of the routines or some of the techniques that you use to cope now that maybe you didn't have, back in 2004?
One of the most important things that Johnny introduced to me was meditation. And, it's not that I hadn't been familiar or been around it, but it was how he talked about it and when he wanted me to introduce it into my life. And he did it in such a way that it was practical and it was doable. So in the evening, even if it's 10 seconds, I work on my visualizations. I also tend to like to see my days from the end to the beginning if I know a tough day is coming. In the morning, it's very important, an integral part of my whole life, that I meditate and I submit myself to something greater than myself. And it gives me a lot of focus. I don't always have even 20 minutes in the morning, but those 3 minutes. In a more practical sense, I'm someone who always travels with my food. That is a gift I give to myself. I'm on the road, I'm busy, it's a tough world out here picking up something quick to eat. So I tend to, even if it's the night before, it's almost, it's like relaxing. I pack it, I love it, I pray over it, I put it in the refrigerator. On Sundays, I tend to cook up things so they're there for me the whole week. In a practical sense, I prepare, and that really relieves me of a lot of stress. If you're a mom, if you're just a busy person, or you're feeling a little weak when I have that time in the month, I'm inclined to reach for things I shouldn't. I am prepared, and for me, that releases stress.
Khaliah, that's a brilliant point that I don't think we've ever even talked about is the relationship between food and stress. Because if you've got the foods that you need that are nourishing your body, it's actually going to make you less stressful because you're going to have more energy. Your body, when your body has more energy, it's being nourished, it can cope with stress better. And biochemically, you're handling stress more properly. You're flushing out stress hormones. But when you're on the road and you're eating just pizza, burgers, and chips and things because you don't have time and you're not prepared, those foods are going to actually cause stress. They're going to cause cellular stress, and that's going to translate also into mental and emotional stress. So I think that's a really excellent connection that you just made.
And for a lot of dieters who have, like me, the all or nothing at all mentality, it's really important. It's really important.
Let's talk about that for a second, the all or nothing, because that is where people get trapped. They're either on a program or off a program, and for me, it's not about being on a program or off a program. It's an evolution. You're always evolving and growing. Every time I talk to you now, you know more about nutrition. You have deeper meditation. Your visualizations are more powerful. Every time I talk to you, you're learning and growing. Yeah, you have fluctuations. You have good days. You have bad days. Sometimes you do things you wish you hadn't done, or eat things you hadn't. But in the meantime, over time, if you just look at the graph, it's going up and up and up toward more health, more vitality, and it's a process. So it's not something you're ever on or off. It's something that you're always rolling with and evolving and growing. Does that sound right?
I think the most important thing for people to know about sustainable weight loss is, right, it's not the destination, it's the journey. Most of us live that one moment to put on that pair of jeans or step on that scale, but in reality, life exists in the meantime.
Yeah.
That's where we are. That's where we are 99.9% of the time.
Yeah.
So really living in the present and in my meantime is probably one of the greatest keys to my personal success.
Yeah.
Not in the future when I get there or living in the past that it's going to come back again, but just really being in that space. And that's something else that you've always worked with me on and assist me on. I mean, it's so easy in these interviews to come off like I have all the answers, but let's be real. I mean, how many times have I been stressed or reduced to tears or feeling lost and confused on my journey? Those are the things people need to know, because the overall trend and what are the tools that you have to get where you need to go are really just to stay on that path.
And also that point of being present, the more I know you, when I talk to you, and one of the reasons I just love to talk to you more and more is that you are so present. You are just here and now, and I feel that. And that presence is your most powerful place. It's when your mind and your body, because your body is always in the present moment, but your mind always isn't. So when your mind and body are present, you're most powerful, most peaceful, most calm, and most effective. And it's contagious. And when I feel you, you are really just here and now. Even though you might have 5 other interviews in a day and 20 speaking engagements and all this other stuff, you're here and you're now. That's an incredible gift. And I'm just wondering if you can share with people how you can achieve that.
I think there's a big difference between being sincere and giving people your authenticity.
Yeah.
And if you give your authenticity, you cause enrollment. The reason people and love you and gravitate towards you is because they can see themselves. They don't just listen to you, they can hear you. And I think that's the difference. And ultimately, you get more than you can ever give in this world. So you and I are very privileged and blessed to function in this space. Yeah. Because we're always getting more than we can ever give.
Yeah. Khaliah, I just want to say that talking to you is always it's both a pleasure and an honor, and I really appreciate it. I'm just wondering if you have anything else you want to share with Gabriel Method listeners, Gabriel Method followers.
If you're listening to this show, I can tell you that you're definitely on the right path, and that you're really currently being gifted with very valuable information. and that having you a part of their lives is, and it has been for me, and I believe it will be for them too, an integral part of their continued success, not only nutritionally, but for their whole sense of spiritual well-being and their family. And that creates a legacy. So you're a gift. I love you and I thank you. And this has been a magnificent evening.
Khaliah, I love talking to you. I love you. I appreciate your time. I know you're very busy. And I hope you have it's evening over there, so I hope you have a beautiful night. And let's talk real soon, okay?
All right.
Okay.
Love.
See ya. Now that I have you, Neil,
Yep.
do you have anything other that you want to share about the conversation?
Well, I think that Khaliah, what she was talking about there, that was really big. And when she was talking about staying present, she was talking about the meditating. These are skills that she has developed over time that really have nothing to do with the lap band. It has nothing to do
with the lap band. Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's what I love about Khaliah's journey, is that everything that she's doing is something I would be telling people to do, whether they had a lap band or not. Now, there's no question in her case, the lap band gave her a leg up. Many, many times that's not the case, but in her case it was. But she would not be where she is right now if she wasn't doing all these other things. And look at what she's doing. She's nourishing her body in an incredible way. She's dealing with the stresses in her life. And she's dealing with the different issues that activate your fat programs. Yeah.
I think that we just finished up a great coaching program with hundreds and hundreds of people in it. And one of the things that I got out of it, you and I haven't even had a chance to talk about this, but one of the things that I got out of it was that everybody's situation is so unique. Everybody's experiences are so different. And that's a beautiful thing. That's what makes this world such an incredibly wonderful place to live in, is that we all have different experiences. And I think that one of the challenges with any diet that's out there, some guru comes out and says this is the way you do it. The challenge is just not everybody can fit in that compartment, and it just doesn't. There's no one size fits all in this arena. And the one thing that I really enjoy about what you teach, John, is how you can look at somebody with lap band surgery, and that doesn't knock them out of the Gabriel Method. There's no judgment as to what's right or wrong. We see a lot of people. One of the you asked about questions that we had. One of the most common questions that we had, and this was an important one, is people are coming off these other diets that they actually have lost some weight with, but they somehow sense that that's not the path for them ultimately. That got them there, but it's not the path for them. And I sense that may be the case with Khaliah, that this got her to this point, and she's grateful for that, but she's always growing and expanding.
Well, as far as the Gabriel Method is concerned, nothing is exclusive. They're principles, and the principles are you have to nourish your body. I don't care what program or diet you're on, you have to nourish your body, which means that you have to add foods that have nutrients that are not corrupted. You have to make sure your digestion is functioning properly. You have to make sure that the food's not overly toxic. And then you have to deal with the mental and emotional stresses in your life. All of these things combined, when you deal with them, change the chemistry in your body to get your body to lose weight. You have to deal with those things. And with Khaliah, she has dealt with these things as well as anyone that I've talked to. And I think we've talked to, and I've talked to thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of people. Khaliah has dealt with these issues as well as anyone I have ever met. And look at the results. You've got someone who's kept her weight off for years and years and years. Yes, she's had lap bands, but a lot of people have failed with lap banding and stomach stapling and all these different things. She hasn't. She's kept her weight off. She's present. She's focused. She's got energy. Her career is exploding. She's meditating. She's doing visualization, and her body is tremendously nourished. She's on a beautiful path, and these are principles. That's all they are. They're principles that you can follow and add to whatever situation you're in.
Right.
Yeah. Good. All right. So anyway, we're going to do this show on a regular basis. Once a month, I'm going to be interviewing some amazing people out there that have information that they can share with us about how to help us on our journey, applying the Gabriel Method principles, learning how to nourish our body, learning how to energize our body, dealing with stresses, becoming successful in other areas of our life. So stay tuned. We'll be talking very, very soon. So Neil, it's great to talk to you again. I appreciate it. We'll see you all soon. Thanks.
Goodbye.